moved to this part of the country, a little bit east of here, and it's a very distinctive look and feel to the farms out there. Again, mostly tobacco farms. So my client sent me a number of photographs. Let me zoom in and show these to you. Again, it's pretty standard. Uh, Here's what they sent. This is some of what they sent to me. Uh, in this part of the country, the farmers will often take a school bus, chop the back of it off, and use it. See, this is a school bus as well, and use it to haul the tobacco as it's being picked. Here's some more of the pictures. Same thing, school bus. Same thing here, school bus. This is a picture from my file that I sent to them, saying, this is again a little bit of the North Carolina, the feeling. Very, very flat country, eastern North Carolina, by the way. Very flat, very fertile, very good soil. They sent this one. I thought this was a nice touch, both the flag, of course, but also the red gate. And the painting I'm doing for them is going to be either 30 by 60 or 36 by 60. I'm not sure which, but it's a very long shape. So I know the content and I know the shape. This is a challenge because obviously I'm not just taking one photograph and doing a painting of it. I'm taking a whole stack of photographs and doing a compilation of those. So let me show you what I did. Let me see. Today's Monday. This was Saturday, 2 days ago. It was sit down. It was frankly, I didn't don't know a better way to say it than put your butt in your chair and work. This is not easy. It's not as fun as a lot of stuff that I do. Man, I love oil painting, right? Anybody out there with me? You love what you do. You love your medium. You love your style. You love your technique. And I have several techniques, but my main oil painting technique, I love doing it. Every time I'm doing a painting, it's a party. Yahoo! But this is hard work. Let me just give you, again, my 2 cents worth. That might be all it's worth for how to do. So I ended up doing 10 sketches. I just for fun. By the way, why did I work on brown paper? There's a little tip here. Because I was tired of white paper. That's all. So I was tired of working on white. So that's a little tip. Sometimes when you're really gutting it out and you're tired of working, you don't feel like doing any more, blah, 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 throw yourself a little curve. I'm convinced that's why sometimes I'll work in a brown pencil or terracotta instead of black. And I'm convinced that's part of the reason that Da Vinci did it. It was just like, oh, drawing in brown is just a nice break after black, 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 black. But anyway, this is charcoal and white charcoal. I wasn't sure for a second there what it was. Charcoal pencil and white charcoal sticks on brown paper. I do have a tip for you, again, for you aspiring artists. When it's time to do sketches, first of all, I'm thinking consciously, I'm thinking composition. We'll talk more about that in a minute. I'm thinking composition, and of course I'm thinking subject matter. I mean, there's supposed to be trucks and farmers and fields and roads and trees and so forth. I'm thinking content, but more than anything else, here's my rule. As I was sitting here on Saturday, this was probably 10 minutes. So that's 10 times 10 is 100 minutes, an hour and 40 minutes. So not real quick, not real quick. My rule to myself, and this was just discipline. By the way, I would put a nice podcast on my computer so I could listen to a story. Here's my rule: just keep your pencil moving. I don't care if you draw faster than you can think. Just keep. I want to put keep the dang pencil moving. Just keep. This is a word for maybe some of you students. When you have to do sketches, thumbnail sketches, just keep your pencil moving. Like you feel like after 3 or 4 or 5, like my brain is out of ideas, right? Like I can't think of any more. Doesn't matter. Keep your pencil moving. Just keep it moving. Have I said that enough times? I hope so. I'm sounding like a professor, and this is what I beat into myself. Okay, so after I got 10 sketches done, You might be able to see some of these little marks here. I actually took my glasses off, like I'll do right now, so I could just see, so I didn't wouldn't get sidetracked in detail. So everything's kind of fuzzy. That saves squinting. Those of you who are young and still have good eyes, you need to squint. But as old people, we got an advantage. We don't have to squint. We just take our glasses off. And I looked at every composition and put a check mark by ones that I like 2 or 3. Just limited myself to 2 or 3. Guess what I did next? I turned it sideways and I looked at every composition from this angle and made a mark by 1 or 2 that I liked. Get the picture? Literally get the picture. Then I looked at it upside down and I chose which composition. So I'm looking for pure abstract composition. I looked from all 4 angles. When I was all done, I turned it back around this way, put my glasses back on and said, huh, how about that? This one right here and the very last one I did right there. Those are the 2 that came up with the most votes. They each had 3 votes. Are you with me? So then the next step is like, okay, let's refine each of those just a little bit. So still working in charcoal on brown paper. I did these 2. So, are you with me? This one translates to this, and this one translates to this. And after I did these 2, and again, squinted and looked, it's like, huh, this one's bubbling to the top. This one is looking like the best one to me. So here I am today. Now I'm going to do a better, like this one you can hardly tell what it is, and that's intentional. What I care about here is the abstract composition. Now I'm going to take that abstract composition and do a tonal sketch. Okay, but now I really need to start looking at subject matter. So I'm going to scatter all these photographs all around me here wherever I can fit them. This is one I'm using quite a bit because that's what I'm thinking is here. But I just want to be surrounded by these images so I can glance up at any second and say, what should I put there? How about that? Okay, so watch with me here, if you will, for just a minute. So this is a very long horizon here is kind of high. It's a little bit higher than a third, but lower than a half. This mark right here is almost dead center, which normally would be against the rules, except that it's counterbalanced by this mark over here. And so all of this becomes a unit, and it's perfectly positioned 1/3 from the end. I also have a little bit of fun detail there, like a power line or telephone pole. I had several of those in this sketch. Once again, I'm looking at this sketch right here and transferring it to this more detailed, more accurate sketch. What I'm envisioning here is a North Carolina country road, not quite a highway, but a paved road, and a dirt road, or maybe a dirt road coming out of a field coming into that road. So that's what's creating this. The light's coming from the right, so there's a big shadow of it, big tree here. I'll go ahead and scribble this in real fast, even though I'm going to paint all this in just a minute. I'm going to paint with gouache and India ink in just a minute. So the white gouache and black India ink to get my gray tone values. Okay, so here's a converted bus, and my client, mentioned I forget where she's from, but it's some other part of the country, northeast of here, but I can't remember if that's New York or Virginia. Doesn't matter. And she's really tickled by the fact that they use converted school buses to haul the picked tobacco. By the way, I didn't grow up in North Carolina. I have a number of friends who did. I have a number of friends who grew up on tobacco farms, and they are all unanimous in their utter hatred. Is that the word? Well, whatever, a bit strong, but their utter distaste for picking tobacco. And I have never done it, but I've heard their stories, And it sounds to me like roughly, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody who knows, but it sounds like it's roughly akin to the rigors of picking cotton. Um, Dreadfully hot, flies buzzing out there in the hot sun. And I do know this about tobacco. If this is a tobacco stalk, the leaves, this is the bottom, this is the top, the leaves don't mature or ripen at the same time. So you go through the field and you just pick the ripe leaves, which are at the bottom. Then a couple of days, a week later, you come and you pick the next batch and the next batch. So as you drive through North Carolina, you literally see these tobacco fields. Sometimes before they've been harvested the last time, there's a stalk about 4, 5, 6 feet tall, and it's all completely bare, and there's just a poof of leaves at the top. That's because they've already gone through 1, 2, or 3 times and have yet to go through the last time. And evidently the tobacco stains your fingers something awful. Anyway, there you go. Interesting little bit of tidbit for those of you who don't live in this part of the country. And I'm thinking if this is a country road, I like these. Let me zoom in here so you can see that. I like, first of all, I've done several paintings from this photograph, and I like the feel of the old North Carolina farmhouse there. So even though it won't be a major element at all in the painting, I think it's a nice element. And then these trees. Of course, here the trees are bare, and in the painting they can't be bare because people are harvesting tobacco leaves, and that's done during the summer when the leaves are full on the trees. So I won't be imitating that part of that photograph. But I think this is about what I'm looking for, and I'll put a man back here. To be realistic, I should put a couple of his kids, slave labor kids with him, but I won't. I'll be nice here. So here they are, maybe in the shade. Okay, I want to mention one principle because it here I am doing a rough sketch for a landscape. I've mentioned this before. Are you ready? I want to talk about something. I learned this from Bob Rankin, who is a prominent, mostly abstract artist here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Very good artist. Consider him a good friend. And he calls it edge ratios. Now, I've been misquoting him for years. I thought he called it boundary ratios. So if anybody's going to quote me, they're going to use my word, boundary ratios. And I just learned a few minutes ago, because I went back and watched Bob Rankin's video, and I learned that he got this from a man named Ed Paschke, Paschke. I think that's it. Ed Paschke, who's passed away about 12 years ago now, but he taught in Chicago at the Art Institute of Chicago. Anyway, edge ratios, that's what I want you to know about. And this applies to all paintings of every kind. The rule is you want a different number of shapes intersecting the edge, all 4 edges. And the reason I mention this, especially in landscape, let me draw a bad landscape composition for you for just a minute. And some of you might say, well, that's not a bad landscape. And I'm going to counter that and say, no, it is. And because you see this kind of thing in landscapes all the time. Actually, I'm making this. I'll make it just bad on 3 sides. Okay. Now, I don't know that Ed, the original author, or Bob Rankin that I got this from, I don't know they said this, but I think it's inferred that a boundary or an edge number of 1, that is, how many major shapes are there along each edge. And in a landscape, many times, if you have a blue sky and the blue sky goes all the way across, that's a edge ratio of 1. And an edge ratio of 1 is not a happy visual thing. Here's another problem, often with landscapes. Over here we have 1, 2, 3. And many times a landscape will be the same on both sides. An artist will have 1, 2, 3 equal, and I haven't drawn it here, but many times if you're drawing a simple landscape or an ocean like a seascape, the artist will have sky, water, sand over here, and sky, water, sand over here, 3 and 3, and that also is a bad visual impulse. We don't like that. Now at the bottom here I have 2. Do you see? Shadow here, 1, 2. So yay, there's one there's one side of this painting, this composition that I got right. Let me go back to the sky for a minute again, because this is one of the most common mistakes that landscape painters make. They have blue sky all the way across. Almost always an unhappy proposition. I'm seeing if I've got a... No, I don't. Never mind. So here's a simple solution to this. Whenever possible, punch something through the top of this boundary or this edge at the top. Right here, it's real simple. Just make these trees bigger so it goes up and violates, that's a graphic design term, violates the top boundary. Now we have 1, 2, 3, and now things are happy. Let me give you another quick, let me start another. Let's say you're doing a seascape. There you go, basic seascape, right? Sky, water, sand. A couple seagulls and a crab. Okay, there you go. And waves. Okay, bad composition. You like my angry faces? It's either bad or it's sad. Either one. Here's a sad face, if that makes you feel better. Okay, what's wrong with this? Number one, it's a 1 at the top. It's a 3 on the side, and a 1 at the bottom. Terrible composition. And I've seen hundreds of seascapes like this. Now, you can't put a tree. I mean, let's pretend there's no palm trees. You can't stick a palm tree in there and make it go off the top. You could stick a telephone pole there, or a flagpole, but no. Here's what you do. You put a cloud, a dramatic cloud, storm cloud. Whoa. And now we have, ignore my flagpole, now we have 1, 2, 3 shapes at the top, and all is well. We're happy again. Down here at the bottom, you're going to have to put some sea oats, a little sand dune, and let me see, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that's bad because you had 3 at the top. So we better do something else, like a shadow coming in here. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4. My sketch is real messy, but I hope you can see what I'm doing here. And then again, you have to do something so the sides are not equal. So you want the basic is edge ratio by Ed Paschke. I learned from Bob Rankin. You want a different number on each edge. Does that make sense? That right there is worth the price of admission for half of you guys watching today. That's a joke, price of admission. No, you didn't pay anything for this. Be happy. You're not paying anything. Okay, so I'm going to get out my ink and gouache. I told some of you guys months ago that for years I didn't buy gouache paints because I didn't realize this is why I didn't do it. But I finally discovered the reason I wasn't purchasing or using gouache is because I wasn't sure how to pronounce the name. We never used it in college, where I went to college, and so I'd never heard the name pronounced. And when you look at it, there's no way to tell how it's pronounced. So joke's on me when I finally realized, that's stupid. You're buying it because you don't know how to pronounce it. This was in the days before Google, where you could just go to Google Dictionary and say, how do you pronounce the word, and type it in. This is way before then. Anyway, yes, it is gouache. It could be gouache, but it's not. It's gouache. Now, I am doing this particular sketch, not really for me. Frankly, to do a good painting, I could get by using this sketch. But that's not a good enough sketch to show my client. Does that make sense? So I have got to do a good enough sketch so that my client can look at it and go, oh, exactly, just like that. I wish I could be there and take a video. Are you with me? That is the sound I want my client to make. Now, it's very possible that my client might go, um, are you with me? I mean, that's the risk we take, isn't it? That is the that's the problem, and that's the essence of doing commissions. Somebody's paying good money, and as artists, we better remember this. People are spending their pretty hard-earned cash for us to do a painting for them, and if we want some of that cash, which I do, then we better take pretty seriously if they go, are you with me? It's hard, but hey, you know what? I am so spoiled. Sometimes I have to slap myself. I did a commission last week, and folks, I am not a high-priced, hoity-toity artist. Believe me, I want to become one. Don't get me wrong. It is not my pride that keeps me. It's simple economics. I'm not famous enough yet to be high-priced and hoity-toity. But my wife and I, we're going out, a little date, going up to see a movie. We delivered a painting that I had done, and I got paid, fairly. I don't know if I should say, just a couple $1,000s for a painting. And we said, yay, thank you very much, love you, bye. Went to our movie, had a good time. Somewhere in the evening, it dawned on me, dang, I am so spoiled, rotten, even though I'm not a high-paid hoity-toity, as I say. Still, compared to most of America, to get paid for doing this stuff, dang, somebody slapped me. Say, Nelson, you've forgotten how blessed you are. Okay, so there, I slapped myself for you. You don't have to do it. I did it for you. Okay? Let's be thankful. Whew. A lot to be thankful for. I mean, I, as a full-time artist, I get so consumed with trying to not only get better as an artist, but also get paid better as an artist, which is marketing and business, right? That I tend to look, the glass is half empty, like, oh man, why? I look at somebody else's work and they get paid $10,000 or $20,000 a penny. Go, how do you get to that point, man? Especially if I think I'm as good as they are. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. So I've got two things working as an artist, right? One is become a better artist, become the artist that demands those kind of prices, and the other is become a better businessman where I market myself. And that is indeed the curse and or the blessing of being a full-time artist. You have to do both. You cannot just focus on being a good artist. That's probably the hardest lesson for every up-and-coming, maybe art school graduate to learn. It's not good enough just to be good. It's true, some people get lucky breaks, so to speak. It is true. Same thing is true, even worse, I think, in the world of the musician, right? I don't know if you know any musicians. I do. I'm a musician, thank God, not a professional money-making musician, so I'm free to do what I want with my music. But from my observation, being an artist is even more gut-wrenching than being a musician is even more gut-wrenching than being an artist. Just from my own observation, that's what it seems to me. So you have to work on two things, and I do. By the way, speaking of working on two things, today is the day of sketches. Let me show you another sketch that I did this morning. I was listening to an important conference call with my wife, and I decided I'm going to try to do some sketches of Harry and Meghan because they're getting married and it's all the rage and it's all famous. I'm not usually into celebrities, but I'll make an exception if I can make some money. So this is my first sketch of Harry and Meghan, and I spent probably an hour and a half doing this, and I'd like to say, this, by the way, this is almost a perfect example of how good and how bad I am at portraits. Now, why am I doing this? The reason I brought it, because I want to get better. Want to get better. In fact, while I'm on this subject, let me hang on just a second. Was it this book? Hang on just a second, would you? Okay, it's not this sketchbook. But again, last week when you guys weren't looking, sometimes I actually do stuff when you're not looking. Can you believe that? The nerve of me. One day last week when you weren't looking. Again, this goes under the general topic of trying to get better. Okay, and I don't think I'll ever be a full-time portrait painter. I'm a part-time portrait painter. Andrew Loomis. If you don't know that name, you don't know what you're missing. Okay, hang on. This is turning into serious. Okay, I wasn't planning to go here, but sure enough, I am. Now, I know I've done this. I know I've done this before. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again because a lot of you weren't here. Those of you who want to learn how to draw human beings, I've just stacked up in front of you. Pay attention. I've just stacked up in front of you the 3 greatest books in the history of America. I won't go back that far. The 3 best books for figure drawing in the world. Let me see. I'm going to start with this one. Drawing the Hidden Figure by Jack Hamm. Hamm. This book, and some people, I've heard some really good artists say this is the best book. Now, the part of the reason I need to give this book special recommendation is because as soon as you look at it, part of you is likely to go, ew, because it's old-fashioned. You can tell he worked in the 50s and 60s, can't you? The style of makeup, the style of hair, the style of face, and so on. But don't let that look like Judy Garland, doesn't it? Don't let that put you off. Look at that. It is so dated. But don't let that put you off. But one of the things I want you to see is the ratio in his book between words and graphics. The reason Jack Hamm is, I think, unparalleled genius when it comes to teaching the anatomy is his mnemonic devices. Here's what, if you started on the road of trying to learn anatomy, here's what you've learned. Doggone it, there's a lot to learn. You have to learn the name of every muscle, every bone in the body, except for the inner ear canal. You know what I mean? You have to learn every bone, and then you have to learn every muscle, and then you have to learn how the skin lays on top of every muscle, and the face is just, I mean, there's 1,000 expressions on one face, and it's so much material that it's easy to bog down and go, oh, I just can't remember it all. Here's where Jack Hamm is your best friend, because he takes so many things and he gives you mnemonic devices. He gives you little tricks to remember. He says things in language. See, each of these is a different way here's 3 different ways to draw a female face. And so on. So, okay, he worked in the 60s. Old book. You ain't seen nothing yet. Book number 2, Jack Loomis. And by the way, what I was drawing the other day when you weren't looking, this, again, all of this goes under, here I am, a professional artist. What do I do sometimes in my quote-unquote spare time? The answer is I work. I practice. So the one page in here, first of all, I reread this the other day, all of this stuff, and the one thing that I drew was simply this right here. Because one thing I know about these books, they don't really do you much good unless you draw what's in them. That's good news, bad news. Bad news, you don't get much benefit by just reading this. It's when you follow him and draw what he drew, that's when you get full benefit. Andrew Loomis is, again, he's a freak of nature. He's drawing all of these faces by rote. These are all invented out of his head. He's not looking. Let me zoom in here again. Andrew Loomis. And not only was he good at faces, he was good at everything. It just makes you sick. All of these are drawn out of his head. And dang, that is good. He's so good. So this book is just about basically heads and hands. It's all about Jack Hamm, the 60s, Andrew Loomis, the 40s. And it's getting worse. I'm giving you the 3 most important books on anatomy, and here's number 3. And it is George Bridgman's Life Drawing. You can find all these online. You can order them. In fact, the Loomis book you can download for free as a PDF. Now, this is the only book of the three I'm showing you that years ago I started for fun on January 1st, and I drew every, even these silly little things. I drew every stinking drawing in this book. Now, the genius of George Bridgman, by the way, I'm taking a long detour here. I didn't expect to do this, but I hope it's good. I know I'm giving you good stuff. I hope somebody finds it this video who needs to hear it. Bridgman's genius was this, and you can see it right here on the cover. He was a genius at abstracting the human anatomy. He exaggerated and he says this himself, he exaggerates the architectural-like features of the human anatomy so that you can learn it. The other thing that Bridgman does, and by the way, okay, Jack Ham, the 60s, Andrew Loomis, the 40s, George Bridgman, the 20s. We are not going forward in time, we're going back. So the two things about Bridgman that are particularly genius. One, see, he breaks the body down into all these little furniture. He compares it to furniture or to architecture and then puts them together. So that helps you learn. Again, this is a mnemonic device. All of this is taking the anatomy and breaking it apart, turning it into like chunks. Helps you remember. Do you see how it's all exaggerated? That's one thing that he does. The other thing that Bridgman does, here it is. He's turning into like comparing the body to a furniture leg. Guy is crazy, crazy genius. The other thing that Bridgman does that I am a huge fan believer in is that his anatomy book is primarily deals with the male anatomy and then adjusts slightly for the female. Most art schools, they put female, when it's figure drawing, nude drawing, they're doing females most of the time, and I believe they're wrong. George Bridgman had it right. Learn to draw the male and you can learn to draw the female, not the other way around. Because the male has muscles and sinews and so on that show up. The female has all those same muscles, they just don't show up. So if you learn how to draw a beautiful, apex of humanity, which is the female figure, you have to start over almost from zero to learn how to draw a male. Whereas if you learn how to draw a male first, you can transition all of your learning to the female. Just add the few things that are distinctive, the wider hips, the breasts, and so on, all the stuff Anyway, there you go. So the three best books on anatomy, and one of the last week when you weren't watching, I did that. And then this morning when you weren't watching, I was doing this. The whole point of this is getting better. Boy, was that a detour. I hope somebody enjoyed that. Somebody out there needed to hear that. Let's go back then to this sketch. I want to incorporate some liney, messy lines in this sketch so that when my client looks at it, she in this case, we'll get a better feel for the texture that's going to be reflected in my painting. Does that make sense? So let me do just a little bit more of this while you're watching, and then I'll hang up and let you go. I had no idea I was going to get to that great big tirade about about sketching and about anatomy. But again, I hope that was helpful. I mean, if you're paying attention, I'm thinking especially of young students. I would say this: ignore me at your peril. Don't go 15 years and say, doggone, I should have listened to that Dan Nelson guy, because he was telling me the truth. And I believe I just told you some really important truth about several things, about anatomy, about how to get better, and about business. To make more money as an artist, you need to do two things. I mean, look, the reason I'm broadcasting this right now is why? Because I'm trying to get more famous. And of course I love teaching you guys. Of course I love your company. I really do. But it's more than that. It's me trying to expand my market, right? You know that. You know that good and well. I'm here because I love you, but I'm also here because I love me. And I want to make more money as an artist. I'm kind of liking this sketch, honestly. Now, let's apply, before I go, let's apply my 4 rules of composition. Let me get a piece of paper. I just said this the other day, I think for the first time. This will be part of, I'm looking for a piece of scrap paper that's blank. This will be part of my book, The Breakable Laws of Painting. And can you handle just a little bit more? Composition, baby. We want to talk about composition. Composition. Okay, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I may get more, but so far in my journey, this is where I'm at. I have 4 guidelines, rules for composition. Number 1 is the law of the thirds. I'm assuming everybody watching this knows what that means. It means when you have a composition, you divide it into thirds this way. That's the tic-tac-toe, tic-tac-toe law of composition. You want your major horizontal elements to be not in the middle, but 1/3, and so on. Okay, so let's measure this here. Bingo, works. I have my horizon, this dark line right here. By the way, the horizon is not always the horizon. Sometimes there is a visual horizon that isn't the same as the literal edge of the earth horizon. And that's partly the case here, the real strong line here. It's a little bit of both. You have to take both into account. But yeah, I'm good in horizontal. And how about vertically? And I mentioned earlier, even though this line right here is almost dead center, which would be a violation of the rule, this whole mass reads as a mass, and it's, bingo, perfect, 1/3. Okay, so the law of thirds. Number 2, I'm going to call it the 2-mass rule. The 2-mass rule. This is me. I've never heard anybody else say this way, but in this one, we're talking about only lights and darks. And by the way, anytime anybody's talking about composition, they are only talking about the major light and dark areas. They're not talking about skinny stuff, small stuff, colors. They're talking about lights and darks. Make sure that's clear in your mind. Composition is composition of major light and dark areas. Got it? Let that sink in if you don't know that already. Okay, here's my 2-mass rule, is that you need to be able to describe either the light or the dark masses in basically one word. I used to say one simple sentence with no and in it. Now I've changed it. Nope, you should be able to describe either the dark or the light shapes in one word. So let's look at this composition and see if I pass that test. Okay, so you squint or you take your glasses off, and now the word can be an abstract geometric word, or it can be a word picture, compared to something. Okay, so one thing I can say is that let's talk about the dark area. It's basically one dark area runs through the middle of this painting, right? Because it's light up here and it's light down here. And the shape is, I could say it's a barbell shape. It's a barbell, viewed from one end, right? But I'm doing okay. Not, the telephone poles, those don't count because they're not major. Those are details. Even this little bit of light, I'm saying doesn't count because it's generally in the context of a larger, that's not big enough. This is all one area, and it's a barbell. There's probably way better description for it. I can draw it. Here's what the shape is. In fact, we're gonna come back to this shape in another bit. So, do you have a name for that? No, an amoeba does not count. But the fact that it's one dark shape is contiguous, and I'm getting to rule number 3 here pretty quick. That helps. I'm going to stick with barbell. Okay, it's a real loose barbell. So I think I'm doing okay. Rule number 3, I've been calling it Mikey's rule because I got it from my good buddy Mike Rooney. And his is a 3-tone or 3-tone rule. I'll just say that. And that is, you have darks, represented by this dark square. You have mediums, represented by this mid-tone square. And you have lights. So it's 1, 2, 3. And here's Mikey's rule. I know he got it from somebody else, but when I asked him who he got it from, he couldn't remember. Let me draw on the back. He says, nah, let me stay here. When, when you're doing a composition, either all the darks need to be connected, or all the mids need to be connected, or all the lights need to be connected. I'm not done yet. You with me? All the darks connected, or all the mids connected, or all the lights connected, except one of those doesn't have to be connected. So in other words, two of these three have to be contiguous. In other words, your darks and your mids, both the darks contiguous and the mids connected, contiguous, or your lights and your mids connected, forming a single unit, connected, even if it's connected by fairly narrow isthmus, or your darks and your lights connected. So two of the three need to be, and the word is contiguous, C-O-N-T-I, and I always say, I think I'm spelling that right. Those of us who live in the United States know that word because it's used of the 48 contiguous states. They're connected. Let's look at my composition. And here I'm squinting again. Now, using Mike's rule, I have lights. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 lights, and there's no way they are connected. So, according to Mike's rule, both my darks and my lights need to be connected. Whoops. Whoops, whoops, whoops. And my darks, I might be able, and here's the kind of things Mike does, and I've watched him work. He'll say, okay, my darks aren't connected, but if I were to extend a shadow, another shadow across this, going across the highway here, then, and make sure the front of this truck is in darkness, now all my darks are connected. Let's make this dark over here. But the undercarriage of this truck, this is all dark, this is all dark, this is all dark. So now my darks are connected. See, here, 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 here. But now, are my mids connected? Dum-dum-dum. No, they are not, because I have mids here, and mids here, and mids here. So according to Mike's rule, this is an iffy composition. I should be looking to see if there's any way I can even get, I use the word isthmus, if I can even get narrow. So here's a midtone, and it bleeds into part of the truck, the tobacco on the back of the truck. Can I make this midtone? Are you with me? And again, I've watched Mike and I paint together every year, and if I make that midtone come down here, so I've got it's skinny, but it's connected. At what point are we just cheating and playing word games with it? I don't know, but it's worth trying. And then, if instead of this, if I had this there, so now I've got a midtone comes up here, hits these houses, and so on, and then a little skinny thing here. Now, in other words, sure, I'm cheating, so to speak, a little bit by, I'm saying now that the midtones are all connected, and the darks, even though I just painted midtones across them, they're still close enough they're connected. I'm playing word games. I hope you hear that. But the point is, that's just a rule to see if your composition is working, and it's worth considering. It's worth thinking about. Like, wait a minute, So in this composition, it seems obvious to me though that the light areas are going to be not touching. Light, 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 and I'm okay with that. And I think that the midtones are close enough. So I get about a B- on Mikey's rule here, right? But it's not the only rule in town, so maybe I'm okay. Now, the fourth, how do you know a good composition when you see it? And the answer is Edgar Payne. This is Dan's rule, Mikey's rule, Edgar Payne's rule. And you can Google this. Google Edgar Payne 12, I think it's 12 design stems. I'll try, I keep forgetting. I'll try to post this on my YouTube community so that you guys who subscribe to me will see this. Edgar Payne, genius painter, father of the California School of Plein Air Painting from the 1950s. Brilliant painter. Again, you can see his work. Google his name, hit image, and you'll see his painting. Lots of High Sierra stuff. But he says every good composition in the world can boil down to one of these 12 different things. And he gives an example, gives several examples. of each one. Okay, and yes, I'm conversant. I'll talk more about that later. Good news, um, this composition here, smack right in the middle of one of Edgar Payne's um, favorite composition, which is a Steelyard. Now, I don't know what a Steelyard is, except that's a Steelyard, and I only know that from Edgar Payne. Or this is a Steelyard, or here it is. Here's how he draws it most of the time. Little box, big box. That's a Steelyard. And good news is my composition sits sweetly right into the middle of Edgar Payne's Steelyard. So that gives me great encouragement that it's probably a good composition. Whew. Boy, I went all around the world in this video, didn't I? I'm gonna leave it to myself. By the way, I'm doing another painting, another commission painting where I'm going through the same exact process. And since I shot my wad today on this video, I'm not going to broadcast that one. But I sure hope that was helpful and insightful and maybe mildly entertaining. Okay, thanks guys. Hope to talk to you again tomorrow at least, maybe later on today.